Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
Happy Thursday. So glad everyone's here. We're going to get started in just a moment. In the meantime, you want to pull up that chat, say hello, share your LinkedIn. I'm going to pull up that Q&A pod. We'll be getting to questions at the end today. Just going to wait another minute or so for more people to come into the room. Welcome. If you're just joining, we're going to get started in just a moment. Pull up that Q&A. Let us know where you're from. It's very quiet in the chat today. It's a sunny, chilly day in Connecticut. Not sure where everyone else is signing in from. You say sun and it just starts popping. Seems like everyone's having good weather. Beautiful. I love all the chats. All right. Well, it is 2 after, and I want to give our presenters as much time. So we'll go ahead and kick it off. So good afternoon or good morning to everyone, and welcome to today's webinar sponsored by Fuel Cycle, Rethinking Qual, AI that listens, sees, and probes. We encourage you to stay active in the chat and enjoy ongoing conversation. As always, please remember to be respectful of everyone participating. Please feel free to enter questions into that Q&A pod during your presentation. Some questions may require follow-up from a different team member, but we'll make sure we get back to you if your questions are not answered live. We're going to open up the floor at the end for questions. Recording of today's webinar will be sent via Zoom tomorrow. Closed caption is available on the Zoom platform. Click the CC on your screen to launch. I'd now like to welcome today's presenters. Kevin is the Vice President of Research and Insights at Fuel Cycle. His background conducting large-scale research initiatives for U.S. government agencies and Fortune 500 companies drew him to Fuel Cycle in 2015. He began at Fuel Cycle leading the client success team and specializing in research for retail, CPG, technology, and healthcare customers. In his current role, Kevin leads the Research and Insights division focused on solving the client's most difficult challenges through Fuel Cycle's research engine. Kevin studied psychology and communication at USC. Knighton is the Director of Product Marketing at Fuel Cycle. Product marketing leader with over a decade of experience driving growth for B2B, SaaS, and AI companies. As a director of product marketing at Fuel Cycle, he blends strategic consulting expertise with hands-on execution to accelerate go-to-market success for market research technology solutions. Prior to Fuel Cycle, Knighton co-founded Get Curious, an AI-powered user research platform acquired by Fuel Cycle. And I'll turn it over to our presenters.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Jennifer. Right. So maybe we'll get started. So just this conversation, just what we are getting into, and what you'll walk away with after this conversation. So we'll talk about the AI moderation as a research technology, and what are the different use cases where it is emerging as a new solution in the market. We'll also talk about what are the typical challenges organizations are facing when adopting this technology, and a preview of where this technology is going, right? So to start off with, I'll hand it over to Kevin to talk about the moderation in general and where AI technology fits in.
Excellent. So Like many of you, I'm sure, who are on this call, moderation and qual-based interviewing is one of my favorite parts of research. I think it's also probably one of the most complex, challenging, demanding types of research that you can do, both because of the potential unknowns, but also because of the high-stakes nature of getting one shot, 1 hour, 30-minute block to make sure you get all the answers that you need from the participant. I think it's also the most laborious in nature, with multiple rounds of coordination, blocking time, aligning your moderators, but also to be nimble and responsive in the moment as you're conducting those interviews. I think there's also a lot of nuance to this too. Highly skilled moderators can pick up on tone, uncertainty, inconsistency, can pick up the conversation, can slow it down. But in the context of what we're talking about today with AI and its application to Qual, it really becomes a question of trade-offs, like everything in market research. So we've highlighted just maybe 4 key areas here of why human moderation is really important. But if we were to think about these 4 in the context of AI, for the dynamic high-stakes environment, we might actually view interviewing as maybe lower stakes, right? Replacing those high stakes interviews with volume and scale. Participants might be able to do it on their own time, require less management. In terms of managing the flow and dialogue, if you're able to design your discussion guide, your moderation guide, in a way that both kind of describes and outlines the pace, the tone, but also one layer kind of deeper in terms of your thinking with if-then statements about all the different possibilities of how something might go. It actually more closely approximates asynchronous qual or maybe even quantitative studies in terms of your prep. But you can still manage the flow very well as long as you have all of that documented and considered. Balancing exploration and timekeeping, this is again a function of the way that you establish how the interview should go. Being able to control the depth of the probe, the time expectations, how long you expect to spend on certain sections. That's all very consistent still with real human moderators. Lastly is the human connection and rapport building. I think this kind of cuts 2 ways. From the interviews I've done and the ones that I've seen, you might have positive response bias, speaking with someone connected to a brand wanting to help versus an AI moderator who you might actually feel more comfortable opening up to. So I think that these are all different types of considerations that we're going to jump into a little bit more. But I wanted to just start with laying the foundation. And then I think we can go to the next slide. Okay. And so the shift towards qual at scale has been underway for many years. Thinking about asynchronous capabilities, your diary studies, different types of longitudinal research. And I think AI moderation is the next big augment to being able to conduct qual at scale. From what I've seen, obviously, we've been considering this for a while, but AI moderation has really picked up in 2025, which is both exciting, but it can also leave us with a lot of questions. I know that I had a ton when I first started looking at the landscape and trying to figure out what was out there. I would consider, I think, maybe 3 buckets when it comes to qual AI moderation. That's in your system design and control, the actual interview execution itself, and then the ability to analyze, synthesize, and summarize that information for insights. So 3 different major key areas that any tool or system needs to be able to address. I think that the pace of adoption of AI moderation will increase. I think that it's something that is especially as more exposure and experience happens, I think we'll be seeing a lot more because of those trade-offs that I mentioned earlier. Instead of being able to conduct 10, 15, 20 interviews, we're talking about hundreds. We're talking about being able to do them simultaneously, multiple all at once across time zones. So I think in some ways, we might get a little bit less out of the interview, perhaps. And that's still honestly TBD. But what you get from that is scale, right? And so I think that's also true in a lot of AI, even in the quantitative space as well. So early stages here, but I think that what Nit and I have really discussed and talked about is what are all the different options that are out there? What are the considerations? What's the maturity level of what we're seeing? And I'm really excited for Nit, and I think we can go to the next slide to share a little bit about the broader landscape.
Yeah. So just to talk about the landscape of AI moderators, and there is a spectrum. So this technology has been developing over the years, even before the LLMs. But we can divide this landscape into two ways. So one is the modalities, right? So what is the medium of conversation that the AI moderator is doing with the participant? So it can be text-based, it can be voice-based, or it can be multimodal. So text-based would be the simple chatbot type of AI moderators that can, so they will be a little bit more than the survey. So they'll be able to take a response and probe deeper just in text format. Voice-based will be similar to ChatGPT voice mode if you have used that. Again, mimicking a human researcher, but primarily through a voice-based model. When we come to multimodal avatar-based AI moderators, so these are more human-like. So they have a human likeness. They are digital personas with a visual presence. Uh, More than that, they can actually perceive whatever is happening at the participant's end. So the respondent, uh, if they are confused, or if there is any visual cues from the participant end, these avatar-based personas can perceive it and accordingly adjust their conversation, right? So this is the next phase and next iteration of AI moderators that are coming up, and Fuel Cycle will also be launching a multimodal avatar-based AI moderator early in 2026. But this is the landscape if we just pick by modalities. Now, coming to the interactivity of these moderators. So one are simply responsive AI moderators that can understand the context and probe, follow up, and generate relevant responses, right? Second ones are the perceptive ones. So not only the tone, emotion, or visual cues, but they can also see and respond to your behavior on screen. So where it is super helpful is if you are doing any usability testing or any website testing. So they can actually see where you are moving, where your cursor is moving, what places you have clicked at, or it can be creative testing, where your reaction to certain part of the stimuli can generate follow-up questions. So these are the two ways in which we can divide the landscape of these moderators. And but again, as I said, this is still early, so there are some challenges, and Kevin and I have been testing a lot of these AI moderators. So Kevin can talk about some of these challenges that we are seeing when testing these out.
Thank you. So I think when we have gone through and specifically thinking about the avatar-based AI moderators, the perceived issues that we've uncovered kind of fall into two sides. There's the participant consideration and issues, and then there's the researcher who owns the project, the considerations and issues. So I'll kind of touch on all of them. Maybe some of the ways to work around or work through some of those perceived issues. But starting first with the participant, I think transparency is the central line here. Disclosing the type of interview that it's going to be done with an AI moderator, what will happen, and how the interview will be conducted is absolutely crucial. We found that participants are willing to participate in interviews. There's not a big difference in terms of acceptance rate, but they tend to have less patience with the AI moderator. So having the AI be quick to understand frustration, friction, being able to move on is really critical. And I think that's what Nitin was talking about with the perceptive model when it comes to AI moderators. I think that there's also a question about of openness of the participant, right? We had said that one of our hypotheses was that participants may not be willing to share as much information with an AI moderator compared to someone who is a real human. And we didn't find, at least in our early testing, that much differentiation, though people were a little bit more willing to open up related to kind of more sensitive topics, things in finance, health and wellness, personal issues, compared to speaking with a human moderator. And that might just be a function of positive response bias or some sort of halo effect. On the researcher side, there is a perceived lack of control, and this would be from fuel cycle researchers, for example, a perceived lack of control of depth and follow-ups, along with the analysis that can come out of the interview itself. And this is where I kind of come back to the discussion moderation guide needs to be explicit about the amount of depth and the amount of probing, the probe style, the framework. You need to be able to establish that when you're building these guides, and it needs to be fed into the system. There's also needs to be a general framework of how does the AI moderator handle the if-then considerations, right? If we hear something that's aligned with what we've expected, doesn't align with what we expected, or is completely going 180 in the other direction, how does the AI moderator handle that? I think when you start to have more rules and start to limit what AI can do in terms of the variability and the variance, you get better outputs. And that's true both in qual moderation, but also in the quantitative side as well. So to that end, this requires you to document your thought process, provide it to the AI moderator. And while this may take some of the art out of the experience, you gain that in scale and in consistency. On the issue of validation, I think ultimately this is a trade-off between scale and depth. We're able to conduct many more interviews, get more respondents, get different points of view. Instead of that 10, 20 interviews, you're talking about hundreds, which can shape our understanding of the output. And that's really where that trade-off, I think, is worthwhile, but I mean, it may not be for everyone. The last point here is in terms of interpretation gaps, it's extremely important that all data needs to be traceable. I think this is a core tenet of how we're approaching AI. Everything needs to ladder up from real data. You need to be able to very quickly go back to the source so that you can verify and validate what is being said. So the bottom line for these perceived issues, testing and trialing AI moderators with internal teams, with low stakes efforts can accelerate your consideration. I mean, AI really is one of those things that's requires repetition, it requires experience, kind of getting your hands dirty, not just a show and tell demo or not just a webinar, for example. So Nitin, I think we can go into the design principles.
Yeah. So just based on Kevin's, so Kevin talked about what are the challenges, and these become the design principles that we are using at Fuel Cycle while building the AI moderator and solving for both the participant side of things and the need for control for the researcher. So these are the principles that we have come up with. So first is the AI moderator should be human-centered, but not human-like, or it should not mimic or pretend to be a human, right? So transparency is key. While participant may or may not be able to tell whether it's an AI that they are talking to, but the system should provide that transparency very clearly in multiple formats so that there is a clear distinction between a human and an AI moderator, right? Context-aware conversations, this goes without saying. Any conversation that we are having with the participant, it should be rooted in facts about the conversation in real time, and it should be able to pull in relevant information about the participant and talk about those topics, right? Adaptive moderation, again, as the participant signals certain needs or certain behaviors, then the moderator should be able to slow down or dig deeper as needed, right? Just to give an example of adaptive moderation, I was testing one of the early beta versions of our moderator, and I was scratching my forehead, and the AI moderator was able to pick on that visual cue and talk about, is there any discomfort that you're facing? Are you all right? So that was something that, again, for me, it was also a bit odd and unexpected. But this is the level of technology that we have at our hands. It is about how can we leverage it to ensure that the participant experience is great, but we are also able to dig deeper into conversations and get really high quality insights, right? On the researcher side, we need to solve for researchers' control so that they maintain full control. It shouldn't be a black box, and it should be trial. It should be so the researcher should be able to trial the moderator in different ways and see that it is performing as per the requirements. And finally, it should be responsible by design. So built in ethical privacy and compliance safeguards. The participant should know where the data is going, how the data is being used, and it is being handled transparently. So all of these become principles for us as we are building out our AI moderator. Uh, Someone asked a question, will there be a demonstration? So at least for this conversation, we haven't planned it out, but we'll be sending out communications to all the participants here, and we'll be sharing more details in coming months. And these are some of the use cases that Kevin can maybe talk about where AI
Sure.
moderator is a great fit.
I think before kind of getting into this, I was doing a lot of thinking about best fit use cases for AI moderation. And I actually think that the number one maybe best fit for AI moderation might be if you aren't currently doing any qual moderation, any kind of qual in-depth interviewing today. I think that there's a pretty high barrier in a lot of instances, whether that's, expertise, whether that's cost, moderation experience, etc. I think being able to actually go in there, set up an interview, it's not terribly different than, for example, the way you might build a quant study. But having AI support you in building the discussion guide, being able to load that, being able to find a participant and try it out, I think is actually one of the most unique and interesting potentials here because of the lower stakes, lower complexity, I guess, that AI moderation can provide. But in terms of where AI moderation can start adding value today, it really is a question about volume and scale. That's really what all this boils down to in my mind. Allowing for members to participate on their own time, in their own language. We're not necessarily locked by calendars and scheduling. But what that means too is that there is a bottleneck maybe on the other side. And I actually saw a question come in. When you're doing a bunch of interviews at once, how do you actually manage and dynamically adjust that moderation? And that's a completely new problem that we're going to have. I would say, and I'll actually maybe address that later, but it is a really good question. I think that there's a use case here for example, lower complexity, lower stakes interviews. We do quite a bit of pre-screens, for example, when we're conducting our qualitative interviews today. So being able to capture the voice, make sure all the technical stuff is good, being able to do some foundational questioning for screening for an interview is actually a really great potential use case here. Instead of going from survey to phone call to text to whatever it might be. We might even be able to just use AI moderation first in that way. I think the next is multi-language, more globally distributed, cross-time zone type research. This one for me, I think is a little bit more future forward in truth. I have questions myself still about the level and the ability to understand cultural and individual nuance as it pertains to a topic, a specific location. That said, I definitely believe that this is something that AI can solve very well for us in the future. I would also say that there's a place for more longitudinal engagements. This goes back to something that AI is doing for us, both in Qual and Quant, which is the ability to access and reference a repository dynamically. Many of you have experiences, I'm sure, where you ran research a few months ago, 3 months ago, and it's sitting in a folder drive somewhere, and you get a question about it. Or something new happens in your product or something new happens at your company, and you need to go back and try and reference something that happened historically. Being able to leverage AI, I think, is important in 2 ways. One, you can use the kind of semantic and or the contextual information to query and find that, whatever that is, kind of more easily. But being able to pull that forward into a dynamic interview based on what someone or someone that looks like that person has said is actually a really like a superpower, right? You don't have to necessarily prep for a follow-up interview because all of that information will be there and you can choose when to reference and when to probe against what was said historically. So if something has changed, we can automatically catch that and say, oh, tell us more about why that's changed, for example. So yeah, these are just some of the many potential use cases. I think that for me, this really does come down to risk tolerance. It comes down to the needs of the output in terms of what you're looking to accomplish. And it comes down to exposure and experience. I think there's no replacement for actually going in there and getting your hands dirty. So yeah.
All right, so just the last slide I have is if you want to test out AI moderator today and if you are evaluating vendors, what are some of the checklist items that you should be looking at? And so the first thing is the research fit. Are you the type of studies that you want to automate with AI moderator? Does the system allow those type of research studies? Can it integrate into your existing insight workflows? So a lot of AI moderator would be qualitative, so you should be so the platform should be able to allow for synthesis and downstream aspects of AI moderation. On the functionalities, you should be looking at what modalities are supported: text, voice, avatar. Does it also have surveys, video screen share, and all those stimulus testing as part of the functionality? And how adaptable are its probing capabilities? Is the AI moderator able to probe differently for different types of questions? Can it probe deeper as needed? And can it follow different directions of a conversation? So adaptability to those has to be tested. On transparency and ethics, the most important part is how clearly the tool tells the participant that they are interacting with AI, right? So it should be communicated multiple times in different forums so that it shouldn't be missed by the participant, and the data recordings, everything has to be managed sensitively. On validation and testing, given that this is a new technology, we need to see published benchmarks, case studies, and demonstrated reliability of participant satisfaction. So participant satisfaction is a core aspect of AI moderation and as a technology, and that is something that the vendor must have spent time doing, right? And finally, scalability and support. Can they support multilingual, high volume studies? Can they support enterprise grade service levels? So that is again an important aspect to look for. That being said, Fuel Cycle at Fuel Cycle we are also developing our AI moderator. We'll be, as I said, we'll be communicating with you over email, but we are looking for beta testers and early adopters of this technology. So more details to come, but we'll invite more participants from this group to test out our technology.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions?
We have a ton of questions in.
We
Lots
do.
to cover here.
We do have a ton of questions. Are we ready?
I think so. It looks like Michael had a question about, what we're talking about with this avatar-based moderator. Is this mainly one-on-one or focus groups? It could also handle focus groups. If so, then there's a follow-up related to the reaction among respondents, what others might say. Nitin, do you wanna handle that?
Uh, Yeah, so just on the so at least the first iteration of our technology will only be supporting one-on-one conversations. So focus groups will come later, but the first thing that we are solving for is one-on-one conversations. And one of the benefits of focus groups is that you can talk to multiple people at the same time in a truncated time space. But with AI moderator, you can do that parallel conversation with multiple participants. But yeah, I understand there are other qualities of focus groups, but at least upfront in the first version, we'll not be focusing on that.
Yeah. Let's see. How would an AI moderator compare with a human moderator on cultural nuance and deep expertise with very specific areas, such as usage of Spanish language programming? There's so many layers in this area that a human moderator needs to have several years of experience with. Yeah. I think that from what I've seen, and Nitin, please obviously jump in as well.
Yeah.
The AI moderator is only as good as the input and the context that it's provided. And so I think there are actually a few questions that cover this about kind of depth, about acronyms, about awareness. I think that a lot of the success of an AI moderator depends on the inputs and the groundwork foundation that you're providing to that moderator. So that again is maybe a bit more setup time, broader thinking about the way that you establish the discussion guide, the context, the objectives, and the framework. But again, if there's something that is highly technical, highly specific, and a human moderator has years of experience, that may not be the best fit for AI moderation, at least in its early stages and as we're developing generally, right? I don't know if you disagree then. More questions. I feel like the questions list keeps growing. Okay. How well can AI moderators be trained on laddering techniques? So this is actually something that I found very impressive. Being able to kind of on the fly understand the context of the answer, but also to know if that is answering or rejecting the hypothesis that we have, right? Is this fully answering this? Is there more that needs to be dug into? Especially if we're able to give examples. I had mentioned if then kind of scenario planning as part of your discussion guide. Being able to establish the frame as wide as you can actually help with knowing when to press or not to press for an answer, for example. Okay, sorry. Trying to dismiss some of these. Rachel Talis, have there been any studies that have shown more openness specifically for IDIs for sensitive topics with AI moderators? There might be. I know that there is the original kind of Hawthorne effect study from way back. I think my notes have always been kind of anecdotal, just about some of our initial testing and our experiences. So nothing to fully stand on here, as far as I know. See. Nin, do you see any you wanna address?
Yeah. So Molly says you mentioned that a human moderator can catch nuances in a way that I don't think AI can pick up. So maybe this is talking about the specific example that I gave. So LLMs, at least as they stand today, they are really good in visual reasoning as well. So and it is becoming more and more real time. So uh, if I share my screen and I talk and when I'm doing the testing and I ask the moderator, what do you see on the screen? So within split second, the answer comes with the description of the page that I'm seeing, right? So there is a very strong real-time visual processing that AI moderators are able to do to respond in a way that seems very, very natural as humans. And regarding the context of specific industries, again, this would need to be trained. So if we are working with an industry that has a lot of acronyms, then it can be fed that context. So the good thing is that you can just upload a bunch of documentation and ensure that the agent has AI moderator has those context already built in. But this is something that we are going to test on for each clinic.
Okay. Have you seen similar results across target audiences? HPCs, patients, consumer goods payers. I think it's less about target audiences and more about the individual, similar to qual interviewing in general. I don't think that acceptance, we're not typically defined by target audience. We're defined by our experience and our situation and our mindset. So I haven't seen very much differentiation in our limited testing, topically anyway.
Yeah. So this is a great question by Dan. What safeguards are in place to prevent the AI moderator from asking follow-up questions that could lead to inappropriate topics? So this essentially becomes the biggest part of building out an AI moderator. These guardrails that we built for the AI moderator so that they can they they can avoid any topics that are going in those directions. One of the things that you'll see our AI moderator whenever we launch, that anytime you start talking to that AI moderator in a way in about a topic that is not relevant to the conversation, so it can pull back the conversation up from that topic. So that is again done in a very natural way, but these safeguards will be built in as we build this AI moderator. So this is one of the design principles that we are using.
Grace asked, and I had mentioned this earlier, if you conduct 100 interviews, all at once, how do you dynamically adjust the moderation? I think that the best practice for me, in my mind, with AI moderation is to almost treat it like a soft launch, multiple waves. Even if the topic and the project is the same, to do one set, evaluate quickly, and then adjust prompt or probes as necessary. So you're still going to be able to get that scale. I just think that you might need to break the volume into multiple buckets.
So one question from Courtney is, how long on average does it take to set up an AI moderator study? So again, so the setup, at least building out the discussion guide, building out the questionnaire and different settings for an AI moderator, those are pretty simple and you can get it done in one sitting in half an hour or 1 hour. But the more important part is the testing of that AI moderator. So you need to be able to test it a few times on your own and see whether it is responding in the right way. So that can take time, but eventually when we launch, it should be pretty easy to get started with the first respondents.
We have an anonymous question. Can you compare the strengths, weaknesses, and best use cases for the 3 different modalities? So that'd be the text-based, voice-based, and avatar-based. So I think that for me, what I've found is that the avatar-based, as long as we're transparent about what it is and what's happening, can actually drive longer, better engagement than, say, text-based or voice-based. I think my hypothesis, and this isn't fully borne out, is that it's completely different than anything that they've experienced to date, right? Most people, and that might change in the future as well, but we've gone from chatbots, text-based engagements, voice-based maybe now with your typical AI GPT. But having someone to look at in the face, eye contact, someone, I think actually sparks a little bit more connection. And the avatar is responding as well, so it feels more fluid. That's just my hypothesis and my experience thus far. Strengths, weaknesses, best use cases. I mean, I think that text-based is nice for some, especially if you're going to be doing a little bit more of integrating survey questions and specific kind of more detailed types of questioning, or if you want them to review something text-based, I think it's really useful. But between voice-based and avatar-based, I think that the future and the benefits of avatar-based outweigh sort of general voice. Obviously, you're going to have maybe people who select out of interviews because they don't want to be on camera. That's a common challenge. Or they don't want to, look at something I don't know. But yeah, I think that no matter which way you go, the benefits are all still the same, right? Which is scale. Okay.
Yeah. So one question from Ollie, will this be coupled with your community platform? So this capability will be a new method in our FC UX platform. So community customers can also leverage this method in their communities, but it is part of our FC UX, that is our Qual offering within FuelCell. So
Antonina asked about the job security of human moderators with the rise of AI moderation. I think this actually dovetails with another question about when not to use AI or when to avoid AI moderation. I think that AI is a tool that enables researchers to be more efficient. That's really the primary line in my mind. And this is something that I've thought quite a bit about as a leader of a team, right, of researchers. I think that there are going to be topics, there are going to be interviews, whether it's based on specialization, based on depth, based on I don't know how important it might be to the business or the organization, that should be held by a qualitative trained market researcher. I think that as complexity of the interview scales, I think AI maybe gets a little bit more risky, right? It requires more input for you to establish the guardrails, which then the question on return on investment is always the question. As I see AI, it's always a matter of how can access to information, right, whether that's gathering or reviewing, be sped up with AI. That really is all this is. So I don't think that there is, at least today, a job security consideration. AI can get us 60, 70, 80% in some cases of the way there, but it always requires a human in the loop. It always requires that kind of checks system.
One from Jody in the chat. There is a modality that we missed, video based, but without the avatar. So that is actually in our product offering. We'll be providing that as a control that you can switch off or on your avatar, so that it can be just a voice moderator, but from the participant side, the video will be captured fully. So that is a modality that we have covered in our product offering.
Oh, wow, there's questions in the chat too.
Yeah,
I didn't realize.
not a lot, but yeah.
Let's see. Andy, is there a time limit, optimal time where engagement with AI moderator drops off? I think this is related to two things, topic, attention span, but also incentivization. I think that there's a reason why a lot of interviews are around an hour or less. They tend not to stretch beyond that. I don't think that necessarily changes with an AI moderator.
Yeah. If I can add one more point to it. So at least the current versions of AI moderators, they tend to fatigue a participant much more than a human moderator would. So with that, I have seen 15 minutes, 20 minutes is a good time frame for at least first set of studies, and then you can iterate on it and see how the engagement could be better. But uh, to avoid fatigue, shorter conversations would be easier.
And what did we miss question-wise?
Um, I think we have covered.
Well, it looks like Nitin, we're getting questions about our specific product offering as opposed to,
Yeah.
you know,
So again, yeah, we are trying to avoid. We'll be talking about our costing and our pricing models as we come closer to the launch. So at least where we are in the development journey is we have an internal testing going on, and mostly in next month we'll start the public testing, and we'll find out beta customers for our product, and the pricing and everything will be available when we launch finally in early Q1 next year.
I know that there's a email here on our thank you page, marketing@fuelcycle.com.
Yeah.
I know that we'll be following up with materials, the recording, as Jennifer mentioned, but I'm also more than happy, Nitin and I, to connect with you guys individually. If you have questions or want to explore more, talk about what a trial might look like, or even fit just to dive deeper, would love to have those conversations.
Yeah. All right.
I think
Yeah,
that's it.
do reach out to us on marketing@fuelcycle.com and we'll respond to your questions.
Emily just asked a new one in the chat.
How long does it typically take to set up these evidence-based models for each survey? So yeah, so I answered it partially. So in within 30 minutes, you can set up the whole study. Actually, it doesn't take even that longer. But it is the testing of your guide that might take a bit of time. But yeah, setting it up would be a 30-minute job.
Thank you all for joining today.
All right, thank you guys. The recording will be sent. All information is in there, and Fuel Cycle will follow up with all of you. So thank you all so much. Enjoy the remainder of your day.
Thanks everyone for the engagement. Yeah. Bye.